They say architecture is about vision, about seeing the unseen shaping space and creating order from chaos. Vera Alden used to believe that, until her life, carefully drafted like one of her design blueprints, cracked wide open. She was 35, a partner at a boutique architecture firm in Chicago. Clean lines, muted tones, polished concrete. The kind of life you curate when you've worked for every inch of success. Vera didn't just build spaces. She built trust. She believed in design that held meaning, stories, and people together. Which made it all the more ironic that her own foundation was a lie. His name was Eli Mercer, smooth as a brass faucet in a luxury penthouse bathroom. A real estate developer, 5 years older, with an eye for style and a talent for speaking in half-truths wrapped in charm. He'd walked into her showroom 3 years ago and never really left. Their romance had started with shared espresso shots and site visits, progressed to long weekends in upstate cabins, and eventually settled into a shared loft apartment with exposed beams and framed blueprints. The irony didn't escape her. They were a designer and a developer, two sides of the same dream. Or so she thought. One Tuesday morning, Vera noticed something odd. The invoices. She handled the creative. Eli often managed the client-facing logistics when they did joint projects. But now, one of the shared clients, Marion Towers, a high-profile condo complex, had her name missing entirely from the new plans Eli had submitted to the city. It wasn't a clerical error. The entire design proposal had been reworked, her signature design elements stripped, her concept gutted. Worse, the file metadata had been scrubbed. It wasn't her project anymore. It was his. She didn't say anything at first. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he was planning to fix it. Maybe he'd forgotten. She wanted to believe that. But the gut knows. Her gut always knew. So that night, she waited until Eli fell asleep, his hand still curled around his phone like it was a lifeline. She pried it loose and opened it. No password. He never thought she'd look. That was his first mistake. There were messages. Hundreds of them. Not from one woman, not even two. From dozens. Some flirty, others explicit. Many from women Vera recognized from work events and gallery openings. But the worst wasn't the cheating. It was the voice memo. She listened to it 3 times. Numb. I'm just playing her. She thinks we're building this together. But come on. She's sentimental. Software. She still believes in partnerships and vision. I believe in money. That was it. The words that took a chisel to everything she thought they had. He was using her, her talent, her name, her network. And now, after draining her ideas, he was preparing to erase her completely. The next morning, Vera didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't confront him with the cliché. How could you? She just brewed her coffee, black, no sugar, and went to work like usual. But in her mind, she started drawing up a new blueprint. Not for a building, for revenge. First, she backed up every design file she'd ever created, onto a drive, onto a cloud, onto 3 separate encrypted backups. She compiled every email, contract, invoice, and time-stamped sketch that tied her to the Marion Towers project. Then she cross-referenced it all with Eli's filings. She found over a dozen instances of plagiarism, design theft, and signature forgery. Second, she paid a visit to her friend Mallory, a lawyer who owed her a favor after Vera redesigned her office pro bono last year. Get everything you can, Mallory said, eyes gleaming. We'll make this airtight. But Vera didn't want just legal justice. That would be too clean. No, this needed to be public. So she created an anonymous Instagram account. It started with vague posts. Ever wonder what lies beneath luxury living? Some developers build more than condos. They build lies. Then she started uploading before and after comparisons of her designs versus the altered versions Eli submitted. Nothing explicit, nothing actionable, just enough for the architecture community to start whispering. The account grew. Fast. People were angry. Designers, interns, old classmates. The comments poured in. I knew someone else had done the original layout. This is why we need licensing reform. He's been doing this for years. And Eli? He had no idea. He was too busy polishing his image, pitching new projects, charming city officials. Until the day his firm was tagged by 3 major design blogs, and then by the American Institute of Architects. Vera watched it all unfold from her sleek, sunlit office. She didn't say a word, but her eyes never left the screen. Eli didn't notice it at first. The first wave of whispers was subtle. An industry friend canceling drinks, a publication delaying his interview, one of his interns quitting with an oddly formal goodbye. He brushed it off. People flaked. Schedules changed. He was busy. But Vera saw it all. She tracked the fallout like a quiet storm moving across a city map. The Instagram account, now with 12,000 followers in under a week, had become a shrine to stolen credit. Designers messaged the page privately, thanking the anonymous source for speaking out. Some shared their own experiences, stories of designs mysteriously changing hands, of ideas taken and twisted, of credits erased at the final stage. Eli wasn't the only one, but he was the first in the spotlight, and Vera made sure he would stay there. At work, she wore her usual calm like armor. Her colleagues noticed she was quieter, sharper, but no one dared ask. Her reputation was pristine, her work flawless. If anything, she seemed more focused than ever. She was, but not just on her designs. She had a timeline now, a strategy. Phase 1, discredit. Phase 2, disconnect. Phase 3, destroy. The discrediting had already begun, and it was working. Eli called her one evening with tension in his voice. Hey, did you notice anything weird online lately? Vera played dumb. Like what? I don't know. Just stuff about Marion Towers. Some design theft thing. It's probably nothing. Should I be worried? She asked, letting a soft edge of worry color her voice. He chuckled nervously. Of course not. You're clean, babe. You've always been the straight arrow. God, he was good. Too good. And too predictable. Vera's next step wasn't digital. It was physical. She scheduled a chance encounter with Ava Collins, the head editor at Designline, a prestigious architecture magazine. They bumped into each other at a downtown design expo. Vera wore a sleek black jumpsuit and carried a canvas portfolio bag with just the right amount of wear. Ava raised an eyebrow when she saw her. Vera, I didn't expect you here. I almost didn't come. Been a crazy month, Vera said, with a sigh timed just right. Then she leaned in slightly. Listen, have you heard the talk about Marion Towers? Ava hesitated. Bits and pieces? Something about shady credit practices? Vera nodded slowly. Let's just say I hope the truth comes out. Soon. And then, with a smile. But I didn't say that. Ava knew a story when she saw one. 2 days later, Designline published an anonymous exposé titled Theft in the Skyline: Who Really Designs Your Buildings? It was sleek, sharp, and laced with details only someone on the inside could have known. It didn't name Eli, but it didn't have to. The article exploded. Eli came home late that night, his phone practically buzzing out of his pocket. What the hell is going on? He muttered, tossing his coat on the chair. Someone's targeting me. Vera sat calmly on the sofa, laptop open, tea in hand. Targeting you? She echoed. Yeah. People are pulling out of deals. My name's being dragged into this online circus. Do you think it's someone from that design forum who got bitter? Vera tilted her head. Why would anyone be bitter, Eli? He rubbed his eyes. You know how jealous people get. I've been doing too well. People hate that. She watched him carefully. Then she said, well, if you didn't actually steal anything, then you'll be fine, right? It was the first time her words had a bite. Not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to make him pause. He stared at her for a moment longer than usual, then turned away. Vera waited until he left the apartment the next morning to begin phase 2, disconnect. She closed their shared business accounts. Quietly, legally. Her lawyer, Mallory, had helped her revise the paperwork weeks ago. Since Vera had never been officially listed on Eli's LLC but had protected her copyrights from the start, there was nothing he could claim. She pulled out of their remaining collaborations, called clients and said she needed time off for mental health reasons. A truth wrapped in a lie. Most responded with warmth. One said, "To be honest, we were about to call you anyway. Something's been off about Eli." She made sure every seed of doubt was watered. Next, she moved her portfolio. A new website, a new brand. Clean, sharp, distinctly hers. It launched on a Thursday morning with no fanfare except for the inbox full of inquiries from publications, clients, and yes, even former Eli allies. The tide had turned. And he had no idea where the waves were coming from. That night, Eli finally confronted her. "Okay, what's going on?" he demanded. "Is this you?" She looked up slowly from her book. "Is what me?" He gestured wildly. "The article, the posts, the rumors. People keep saying things, hinting that someone close to me is sabotaging my name. Do you think it's me, Eli?" she asked, her voice calm but cool. "Because if you do, maybe you should ask yourself why." He opened his mouth, closed it, and for the first time in 3 years he had no charming answer. The next morning, Vera sat at her kitchen table, spooning yogurt into a bowl like it was just another Thursday. Outside, the city hummed. Traffic, horns, footsteps on the pavement below. But inside, it was silent. She felt it. That precise moment in revenge when things shift, when the anger begins to settle and the control becomes delicious. Her phone buzzed. Ava Collins again. A simple message. "Part 2? Got more?" Vera stared at it for a few seconds, her lips curving into a smile. She didn't respond. Not yet. She had learned the value of patience. Instead, she opened her notebook, an actual leather-bound notebook she'd used since college. Inside were sketches, design concepts, and now, a 3-page list titled Eli. The Collapse. Each line was methodical, each step built on the last, each ticked box another nail in his glossy little empire. Eli, for his part, was spiraling. He spent most of the day making phone calls, trying to patch holes that had grown too wide to cover. 2 clients had paused payments. One wanted to revisit the contract. A design partner ghosted him entirely. Even his intern, a young woman named Kaylee, had posted a cryptic story on Instagram. Funny how credit works when you're not the one who earned it. It didn't tag him, but everyone knew. By mid-afternoon, Eli sat on the edge of their bed, phone in hand, staring at the silence. He hadn't said much to Vera all day. He didn't know what to say. She, meanwhile, moved through the apartment with a calm that made him uneasy. She wasn't cold, but she wasn't warm either. She was composed, untouchable. Like a painting you're suddenly not allowed to hang. That night, she asked him over dinner, "Do you trust me?" He blinked. "What?" "I'm just curious. After everything, do you trust me?" He laughed nervously. "Of course. You're the only person I do trust." She smiled. "That's good. I think that's important. Trust it was a trap. He just didn't know it yet." Phase 3. Destroy. It began with the anonymous email tip Vera sent to the Architects Guild. She didn't accuse. She asked questions. Is it standard for a firm to present designs strikingly similar to a recent thesis from Parsons School of Design? Is it ethical to accept awards for projects where copyright documents list a different name entirely? How do you distinguish inspiration from theft in competitions? Attached were PDFs, side-by-side images, source material, dates. She never named Eli, but again, she didn't have to. By Friday afternoon, a well-known design podcast picked up the story. The host, a snarky former academic, referred to the mystery architect as the Magpie and laughed for a full 30 seconds before moving on. Vera listened twice, once for satisfaction, the second time to make sure it was spreading. The next hit came from inside his own apartment. Vera left a folder, just one, on the dining table. It contained an invoice from a 2019 project where she was the lead, but Eli was listed as creative director. A printed email chain showing Vera's concept drawings, ones Eli had once forwarded to a client, removing her signature. And finally, a note, handwritten, that said, "If it ever mattered to you, this should have too." Eli found it at 1:13 a.m. He didn't wake her, didn't say a word. He just sat there for half an hour, staring at it, like maybe if he blinked hard enough, it would vanish. By the end of the week, Eli had lost 2 speaking gigs, 1 brand partnership, and the confidence of nearly every woman in his creative circle. He blamed cancel culture. He blamed haters. He never once blamed himself. Vera noted that too, like a final checkmark at the bottom of her page. On Sunday, she stood in front of her new studio, sleek, minimal, painted a soft pearl gray, and unlocked the door. It was hers. Entirely. No shared bank accounts, no ghost partners, no co-founders to steal oxygen or ideas. She placed her portfolio on the desk and pulled out her phone. The Instagram account had reached 30,000 followers. Her inbox had 5 new collaboration requests, one from a brand that had just dropped Eli. Her lips curved into something not quite a smile, a breath, a beginning. Not a happy ending, not yet. But the story was finally hers. By Monday morning, Eli had started avoiding the mirror. He used to admire himself without shame, fixing his collar, smoothing his dark hair, tilting his chin like someone might take his photo at any moment. But now, his reflection mocked him. It looked tired, exposed, and worst of all, irrelevant. Vera had noticed. He hadn't asked her to breakfast in days, hadn't posted a photo of them together in weeks. The man who once made every meal an aesthetic event now stood in the kitchen, drinking cold coffee from a chipped mug. The irony? It was a mug she had designed. His success, it turned out, had always been served in cups she made. She received another message from Ava Collins. "Guild meeting this Thursday. They want to talk. Want you there." Not him. It was a quiet win, but a big one. The Architects Guild had always been Eli's playground. Vera had been the shadow, the +1. The woman in the background nodding politely while others shook his hand. Now she was being invited directly, not as his partner, as Vera Alden. She didn't reply immediately. She let them wait. Later that day, she received a text from Camilla Duran, an editor at a well-known design blog. "Vera, I've been following everything. Your name deserves more space. Want to talk?" That one she did answer. In fact, she offered Camilla a tour of her new studio. And just like that, the article was set. The real vision behind the brand, meet Vera Alden. Eli had no idea. He wouldn't, until it went live. That night, as they sat on opposite ends of the couch, Eli spoke without looking at her. "Have you noticed things shifting?" Vera turned a page in her book. "What do you mean?" He paused. "Clients, engagement, even people." I feel like something's changed. She looked at him over the rim of her glass. I guess people are finally seeing who's been doing the work all along. A beat. He laughed nervously. You mean us. She didn't respond. The silence felt sharper than any scream. Tuesday. The article dropped. Camilla hadn't held back. The headline was bold. The pull quotes even bolder. She was never just a supporting role. She was the architect behind the architect. Vera Alden built more than rooms. She built legacies, quietly. And now, she's finally done being quiet. The photos were stunning. Light filtering through her new studio, Vera in white linen, her sketches laid out like battle plans. The comments rolled in, fast and furious. Eli's name wasn't mentioned once, not even as a footnote. Vera watched the metrics climb while sipping tea in bed. Eli slammed the bedroom door open 2 hours later, holding his phone. You talked to the press? Vera didn't flinch. Yes? You didn't even mention me. I wasn't asked about you. He stared at her. This is sabotage. No, she said, setting her cup down gently. This is credit. He paced, muttering, hands in his hair. You don't understand what you've done. Vera stood, calm, controlled. You built a brand on borrowed talent. You stole my ideas, my drafts, even my reputation. The only thing I've done now is take back what was already mine. He didn't sleep that night. She heard him pacing, calling someone, snapping at his screen. But she slept. Deeply, peacefully, and in the morning the first email she opened read, Subject, Guest Judge Invitation, Tokyo Design Week. Body, Ms. Alden, we'd be honored to include you. She smiled. That one she'd accept. Thursday, the guild meeting. The room was minimalist. High ceilings and clean lines. Her favorite kind of setting. She wore charcoal black. Her hair pulled back, eyes sharp. The board welcomed her like a returning queen. The chairwoman, an older woman with silver-streaked hair, said, It's good to see your name in its rightful place. Vera nodded. It's good to finally use it. They discussed awards, ethics, mentorship programs. No one asked about Eli. No one needed to. He was already yesterday's headline. When she walked out, the sky was gold with late afternoon light. She didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. This wasn't just revenge anymore. By the end of the week, Eli had started to disappear. This was a rebirth. Not physically. He was still in the apartment, still moving through the rooms like a ghost, but something in him had fractured. He no longer tried to charm her or argue or explain. He simply existed, a fading echo of the man who used to control the conversation, the room, the narrative. Vera, meanwhile, was blooming. Like something had been unlocked, an old, forgotten power she'd buried beneath compromise. On Friday, she was invited to speak at a private design forum in D.C. A year ago, they'd asked for Eli. This year, they wanted her alone. No introduction needed. No partnership mentioned. The flyer read, Keynote Speaker Vera Alden, on ownership, vision, and the cost of silence. She stood in her studio before the trip, hands resting lightly on her newest model. A sleek modular office space, sunlight trapping, minimal. It wasn't just architecture, it was strategy. Her assistant knocked gently. There's someone here to see you. Eli? Of course. He looked worse than before. Disheveled, unshaven, no blazer. His eyes darted around her studio like it betrayed him. Which, in a way, it did. He didn't sit. You've made your point, he said. Vera didn't look up. That wasn't the point. He frowned. What was it then? To humiliate me? To ruin me? She looked him dead in the eyes. To remove you. That silenced him. I never meant to, he started. She held up a hand. You used me, Eli. You took my sketches, passed off my ideas, built your name on my spine, and the worst part? You convinced me that love meant letting you do it. He swallowed. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I was useful until I wasn't, until I got too bright, too seen. His voice dropped. You don't know what it's like to feel irrelevant. Vera smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I do now. Because you showed me. He finally sat, on the edge of the sofa like a guest in her life. I'm losing everything, he muttered. They're pulling out of projects. Mentions are drying up. They're calling you. She leaned against her desk, arms folded. Good. That means the system is correcting itself. He hesitated. I need your help. She actually laughed. Softly, but it was cold. You need my silence, my shadow. Again. He looked down. Maybe. Vera crossed the room, slow and precise, like walking through the final act of a performance she'd rehearsed in her mind 1,000 times. No. I'm offering partnership, he said quickly as she turned away. Real partnership. You and me. Equal shares. Your name on everything. My name is already on everything. You just forgot to look. She opened the door. Get out, Eli. He didn't argue this time. That night, she opened her private email, an inbox she used only for herself. One message stood out. Subject: anonymous submission, misuse of credits and client misrepresentation body. Hi, Vera. You probably don't remember me. I interned under you, technically under him, 2 years ago. I still have the files you created that he submitted under his name for the Charleston project. Attached were blueprints, emails, and a PDF. Proof of original authorship. Vera Alden. She stared at the screen for a long moment. The next morning, she sent a polite message to her lawyer, then one to the Architectural Ethics Review Board. She didn't use threats. She didn't need to. She simply submitted the facts. At lunch, she received a call from the editor of a major magazine. Vera, rumor is you've got a story. Want the cover? She sipped her espresso. Let's talk. When Eli received the cease and desist letter, she wasn't there to see it. But she imagined it clearly. Him, jaw clenched, paper trembling, the realization that she wasn't just done with him, she was erasing his name from every place it didn't belong. This wasn't a breakup. This was a correction. The magazine hit stands on the first Monday of October. Vera didn't buy a copy. She didn't have to. It was everywhere. Her face on the cover. Calm, confident, backlit by the soft gold tones of her studio. The title? The Woman Behind the Walls, How Vera Alden Reclaimed Her Voice and Her Work. Inside were details. Too many, if you asked Eli. Blueprints, timeline comparisons, testimonials from interns, contractors, even past clients. All naming her as the original force. All identifying him as the man who took without asking. The article didn't say fraud. It didn't have to. By noon, Eli's firm suspended him. By night, his name was trending. For all the wrong reasons. And Vera? She was in Chicago, sipping wine at a rooftop dinner with new investors. The difference was staggering. A year ago, she would have been tagging along, silent, smiling, shrinking herself to fit his shadow. Now she was the one they asked questions, the one they toasted, the one who owned her seat at the table. You handled it well, one of the architects told her. You didn't scream, you didn't burn it down. Vera smiled, slow and real. I just pulled back the curtain. Back in New York, Eli called. She didn't answer. He emailed. One line. You won. Was that the point all along? She stared at the screen before deleting it. Not out of anger, but because the answer didn't matter anymore. The point had never been to win. The point had been to survive with her name intact. To make sure the next Vera, the next brilliant, silenced woman, knew she didn't have to stay small. That was the legacy. Not the fame. not the fallout, the signal. Weeks passed. Vera returned home to find a handwritten note wedged in her mailbox. No name, no return address, just delicate penmanship and one sentence. Thank you for reminding me that we're allowed to fight back. She kept that note. Framed it, actually. Hung it in the back hallway of her new studio space, a place where only she held the lease, where her name was etched in brass by the entrance. Sometimes people asked if she'd forgiven him. She always paused before answering. Forgiveness wasn't the point. This wasn't about erasing what he did. It was about rewriting what she allowed next. She didn't want him to suffer. She wanted him to understand. The cost of underestimating someone like her wasn't vengeance. It was becoming irrelevant to her world, permanently, and that was far worse than revenge. Months later, Eli moved out of state. Quietly. She never saw him again, but his name sometimes floated across her inbox. Forwarded articles, requests to confirm or deny facts, whispers of lawsuits, revoked partnerships. Each time she'd smile gently and press archive, not from spite, from peace, because the story wasn't about him anymore. It was about her. At the end of the year, she hosted a small event in her studio. Just friends, clients, the people who stuck by her. They raised glasses and danced between shelves of models and inspiration boards. One of the interns from the Charleston project came up to her, visibly nervous. I just wanted to say, if it weren't for what you did, I'd have quit architecture. Vera touched her arm. Then I'm glad I did it. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's not violent or chaotic. Sometimes it's just finally being seen.